All right, welcome back. So in the last video, we learned how to graph just the basic sine and cosine. Now what we're actually going to learn how to do, we're going to do it in pieces, but we're going to learn how to graph y equals a sine of bx plus c plus d. Now we're not going to do a whole piece yet. Okay, we're just going to start with just the b. So let's start. And by the way, we're also going to do the same thing with cosine. That's really the goal of this section. Okay. So let's start with, say, y equals sine of bx. Okay, well, first let's do an example specifically. So the first example we're going to do is number 18, and that's y equals sine of 4/3 x. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to recognize that this is actually sort of a stretch or compression in the horizontal direction because it's acting on x. Okay. It's actually a compression, or yeah, it's actually a compression, but that's not really so important. But what we are going to do is we're going to say, okay, you know what? Normally sine has these 4 points that we look at. Okay, we look at pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Okay, now I have a little secret for how I do it in general. 2 pi is the whole period. Divide that by 4 is pi over 2. Times pi over 2 by 2 is pi. And now instead of going pi plus pi over 2, I'm actually thinking of pi over 2 times 3. So 2 of them is 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2. That's going to make a little more sense when I do the problem. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. Okay, so the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is our period? Okay, so I'm going to show you sort of the thinking that goes into it, and then I'm going to show you how I actually do it. Okay, so the thinking that goes into it. Okay, is I'm going to say, okay, well, if 4x over 3 equals 2 pi, okay, then x equals 3 times 2 pi over 4, which is 6 pi over 4. That's 3 pi over 2. Okay, so now this is our new period. Okay, the actual formula is that you're going to take 2 pi divided by the magnitude of b. And this is for y equals sine bx. Okay, so you're just going to take the 2 pi and divide it by, in this case, 4/3, and you're going to get your 3 pi over 2. Okay, so the full period is 3 pi over 2. Okay, let's start doing some graphing. Let me make this just a little bit smaller. This a little bit. Okay. I want to do that in a different color. There we go. Okay, so now that thing I was saying about dividing into 4, now you're gonna see what I'm talking about. So the full period is 3 pi over 2. So let me just mark that down somewhere. Boom. Oh. Boom. 3 pi over 2. Now, going back to the graph. This was cosine, but its sign doesn't matter here. This pi over 2 is 1/4 of the full period. So the first place I'm going to mark is going to be 1/4 of this full thing. Well, 3 pi over 2 divided by 4, that's just 3 pi over 8. So my first mark is going to be at 3 pi over 8. Okay? Now the second mark is going to be at twice that. 2 times 3 pi over 8, let me mark that a little, yeah, that's better, that's fine. 2 times 3 pi over 8 is 6 pi over 8, which actually reduces to 3 pi over 4. Okay, and then the next mark is actually going to be 3 times this 3 pi over 8. So this was 2 times the 3 pi over 8, the next one is 3 times 3 pi over 8. That's 9 pi over 8. Okay, and the next one, of course, will be 4 times, it's 12 pi over 8, which, dividing that by 4 equals 3 pi over 2, which is what we have. Okay? All right, so we have our tick marks. Now, we're looking, this is a sine graph. Okay? Sine graphs, looking back, they start at their center and go up. So this one starts at its center and goes up. And then I can graph this accordingly. And of course, I can keep going. It'll keep going the same way forever. Okay, that's your first graph. Let's see the next one. Next is going to be y equals 2 sine x plus pi over 3. That's 24. Okay, so now this one there's no period change, but it does have a change in terms of a shift. Okay, so here what I'm going to say is I'm going to take my original points on sine. So the original points that I take on sine, or cosine really, I'm just going to look at the x coordinates because I know what the y coordinates are going to do. I'm just going to graph them. So I'm just going to take the x coordinates. That's x equals 0, x equals pi over 2, x equals pi, x equals 3 pi over 2, and x equals 2 pi. So it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Okay. And what am I going to do? I'm going to subtract pi over 3. Why subtract? Because remember, if, let's say, x plus pi over 3 equals 0, that means x is negative pi over 3. So this one is negative pi over 3. Pi over 2 minus pi over 3, that's pi over 6. By the way, these calculators, the TI-30X8, can do fractions. There's a little button right down there. Okay, right down there. You see me pointing to it. That's a fraction button next to the 1. Okay, I'm just going to press 1, that button, 2, minus 1, that button, 3, and I get 1/6. So I could have just done that with the calculator in case I'm bad at fractions. I, of course, am not bad at fractions because I'm awesome, but I understand that when I took pre-calculus, I was bad at fractions. Okay, pi minus pi over 3 is 2 pi over 3. 3 pi over 2 minus pi over 3. That one I have to think about, so instead I'm just going to do it in the calculator. is, and I get 1 1/6. So now I know that's 7 pi over 6, but I could, for example, press, if I have this 1 1/6 in my calculator, I could just press the second button and then that fraction button again, and it'll give me 7/6. Ah, it's coming out backwards. Okay. And then 2 pi minus pi over 3, that's going to be 5 pi over 3. Okay, so these are my x coordinates now. Okay, and now I'm just going to graph the sine off of these. So start out at negative pi over 3, which I'm going to say is here. Okay, pi over 6 is about here, let's say. Okay, because I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm not a perfectionist here. You all are like, yeah, we know you're not a perfectionist, Dr. R. 2 pi over 3, just checking that. Okay. Seven pi over 6, and 5 pi over 3. Okay, and then I'm just going to graph the sine. So bottom, top of the graph, middle of the graph, bottom of the graph, middle of the graph. Let me draw that in, let's say orange here. Okay, now I still haven't done this 2. Right now what I have in orange is actually y equals sine of x plus pi over 3. So let's go ahead and go into red. I'm going to graph the 2 of times it. All the 2 does here, since it's multiplying in front, is it multiplies everything by 2. So 0 multiplied by 2 is 0. 1 multiplied by 2 is 2. 0. Oh, wow, that's really down there. Let me move this up just a tad. There we go. Okay, and so we get okay, so y equals 2 sine x plus pi over 3. That's in the red. Okay, all right, I'll see you all in the next video. My mouse, there we go.